Vines, branches, and tendrils grab at 682's wriggling body as the skinless, grinning face of the skeleton queen bears down. She is in total control. For one of the first times ever, 682 has encountered a threat who might be too powerful for even its strength and adaptability to surpass. How could such an impossible circumstance come to pass? Lost in an endless abyss of liminal realities, separated from its closest companions, and officially declared to be neutralized by the SCP Foundation, the immortal reptilian entity known as 682 continues its incomprehensible journey through the Backrooms. 682 had explored over 20 different levels of the Backrooms, from vast oceans to lost cities, to even mind-warping spaces that evoked distant childhood memories. Very little, if any, of what 682 had encountered could be described as fun or adventurous. In 682's mind, the Backrooms was a nightmare controlled by malicious forces that only wanted to bring harm to the creature. The lizard had faced scores of violent entities ranging from low-level fodder like clumps, smilers, and death moths, spear-wielding mini-bosses like Tiny and Argus, and one particularly crafty and well-equipped explorer. Through all of these encounters and the dimension-hopping hijinks that came with them, 682 had become enduring and resilient. The uncontrollable rage and disgust for life that had defined 682's personality during its time in containment had gradually subsided into an almost enlightened state of determination. The will to be its own master, decide its own destiny, and to travel the Backrooms not as a conqueror, but as an entity seeking freedom for its sake. It spent a long time contemplating its purpose in the cryptic ruins of the Petrified Garden on level 23, before making a new effort to travel between layers of the Backrooms. As one might expect, the next level that 682 was able to access was level 24, known by some as the Study, but better known by its locals as the Moon. Even as far as levels in the Backrooms go, level 24 was an unusual concept for 682 to understand at first. The walkable portion of the level appeared to be a plastic model of a moon, blown up to colossal proportions. The moon was a part of a scale model of the solar system, and was situated inside a Victorian-era study of impossible size. The exact details of the massive room were hard to see, given the anomalous blurry filter that appeared to impede the vision of those who tried to look away from the moon. No consistent theme with the previous levels, vague and inexplicable properties, and a seemingly random resemblance to human-made structures. Classic Backrooms, 682 mused. In the distant expanse of the study, Entity 682 thought that it saw a titanic human man in a tuxedo pulling a book from one of the shelves and sitting down to read it. This blurry giant was known simply as Buford, and it was the only unique entity to this level of the Backrooms. The craters and rifts of the moon were home to swarms of death moths and clumps, though there were noticeably not as many of these hostile entities as on previous levels. 682 regarded the presence of these familiar foes as something of a novelty, given the amount of time it had spent on the relatively safe level 23. The more things change, the more they stay just as disgusting. While 682 was not exactly pleased with having to share the same reality as these infernal things, it was not about to rush in and start taking names. If the researchers at the Foundation could see 682 now, they might assume that the reptile had been reformed of its violent ways. This was not the case. 682 had come to accept that these creatures had no real ecosystem or drive to propagate themselves as other life did. The mechanics of their existence seemed to be limited to the mere fact that they were extensions of the Backrooms itself, obstacles placed in the path of explorers to thwart their progress. They were more like the enemies of a video game than sentient life forms, and 682 had come to believe that fighting them would be doing exactly what the Backrooms wanted it to do. If 682 needed to defend itself, it would absolutely fight back against these stuck entities. But by now, it was obvious that they were not a real threat. There were better games to play in the arcade of life, and 682 was not feeling particularly flush with tokens. Appropriately enough, the next level that 682 arrived at, level 25, was filled with a wide selection of arcade machines. Once again, the Backrooms had thrown another devious curveball in the direction of 682. The hard-to-destroy reptile was reminded once again of just how unpredictable the variations in theme could be between levels. True to its retro aesthetic, level 25 seemed to be covered in a thin layer of dust. The arcade machines themselves were damaged and broken down. The few that did seem functional were not equipped with any game that 682 was familiar with. Then again, 682 was not exactly an avid gamer. Perhaps the sorry state of the arcade would be explained by the level being where the 80s went to die, or more likely, by the fact no human explorer had made it this far into the Backrooms in quite some time. The lack of humans in an environment designed for them was hardly a new occurrence inside of the Backrooms, and as usual, the general idea seemed to be that something that was usually normal, like a hotel or an office, was presented in a way that made it inconvenient. An arcade where no games could be played was certainly a bummer, but considering that it's several layers farther down than a level where explorers were forced to confront their traumatic pasts, and another level that threatened all explorers with ever-shifting extreme environments, the plight of being stuck in a defunct arcade was a bit of an underwhelming concept. 682 had long since accepted that there was no linear difficulty curve to the Backrooms, and given that this place was also devoid of entities, level 25 didn't seem to have much to offer the reptile. With no other options, 682 decided to try one of the arcade machines. Naturally, it didn't carry any quarters on its being, but that was only a minor quibble to a creature as adaptable as 682. I can do anything. As 682 approached one of the functional arcade machines, it developed a quarter-shaped skin tag on the tip of its snout, similar to the knobby growth of a male Gyarl crocodile. It extended this growth towards the coin slot on a wire-thin appendage. As if it were an actual quarter, 682 did its best impression of placing a quarter inside of an arcade machine. Once the machine blinked to life, 682 retracted its organic quarter. The bright screen of the cabinet began to shuffle rapidly through numbers like a slot machine. It did this for several minutes until landing on the number 28. Sparks of energy coursed through the arcade cabinet, and a sudden burst of light whisked 682 several levels ahead. 682 could see a tunnel of light on all sides as it flew through the liminal space between liminal spaces. It was able to perceive a hint of level 26, a seemingly ordinary apartment building, and level 27, an innocent-looking hot spring inside of a cave. Both concepts were old hat at this point, so 682 didn't feel too bad about skipping them. Besides, it was a free being now, and what was freer than breaking the rules and skipping a few levels? Unless the Backrooms was hoping it would do that. But there was no time to think about the inscrutable intentions of the Abyss's creators, because 682 had reached the other side of the light tunnel and had been deposited into level 28, a dimension with a navy blue sky and a single large castle on a hill, the only landmark. 682 moved towards the castle and was greeted by the sound of great thunder above. Dark storm clouds began to fill the sky as rain poured down onto the forested valley surrounding the keep. While no ordinary storm would deter a being as powerful as 682, the howling winds and flashes of light signaled that this weather was anything but ordinary. The reptile naturally decided to continue into the only available shelter, the castle. It barged in through one of the walls in an effort to hide itself from the elements. It soon learned that it was not alone. A foreboding figure approached from the darkness of the keep, clad head to toe in colorful blue armor.
Who goes there? Answer me, you scaly knave!
Feeling a bit spicy, 682 decided to break out an old favorite threat.
What good does it do for a lamb to know the name of its butcher? I am simply passing through. You're just one more lifeless husk dreamed up by the Backrooms, so leave me be and return to your dull routine of scaring weak humans. Foul beast?
The Blue Knight said.
I would never scare humans on purpose. I happen to quite respect them. As a matter of fact, I have met a particularly good human who taught me so many wonderful things. You say you've met a good human?
682 asked.
Other than the exception of the dead, I cannot think of any humans that are worthy of existence, let alone good. Well, then you don't know Sarah,
the Blue Knight said, seemingly in a state of rising emotional distress. The storm outside began to grow in intensity in response to the Blue Knight's provoked reaction. 682 found this somewhat intriguing and decided to push the armored figure a bit further.
Is she your girlfriend?
682 taunted. 682 was becoming simultaneously more amused and disgusted by this Blue Knight as the interaction went on. It was clear that the Blue Knight was a bit of a lunatic and definitely a soft-hearted being, though as 682 pondered his words, an odd feeling of realization washed over the reptile. Was the current situation regarding 682's lost traveling companion, Entity 7, Jerry, not dissimilar from what the Knight was going through in regards to this human named Sarah? 682 had learned much about the Backrooms during his time traveling with the Blue Hyacinth Macaw and did miss the avian entity very much. The idea that Jerry may have forgotten about 682 and might be on adventures somewhere else made 682 almost feel regretful. Suddenly tormenting this overly sensitive Knight didn't seem to be that much fun to 682. All at once, the reptile wanted out of this level, so he ordered the Knight to give him an exit. The Blue Knight shook his head for a bit, but ultimately relented. He led 682 to an archway deep in the castle made of solid bones. It was a dimensional portal, like many of those seen in the Backrooms, and it was carved with the number 32.
This portal shall take you to the Forest of the Skeleton Queen on level 32. It is a dangerous place where you will almost certainly meet your demise. The Skeleton Queen is not known for her hospitality.
The Forest of the Skeleton Queen was about what one might expect from its name. A dark and gloomy woodland beneath a starless sky and a crescent moon. Of course, there was also the countless skeletons floating amongst the trees to give the level some personality. All of them seemed somewhat alive, but like many of the Backroom's other tricks, this may have only been an illusion.
It will do.
Before 682 could even fully take in the scenery, it could see another entity moving between the trees. It seemed to be a human woman in a Victorian dress and skeletal face paint. She appeared to gesture to 682, beckoning the reptile into the forest. There was nothing to lose yet, so 682 took to the mysterious woman's provocation and followed her. Not too far down the path, 682 lost sight of this strange human woman. It was as if she had been there a moment and was gone the next. 682 pondered the odd nature of this encounter and decided to turn back around and follow a different path. As soon as the reptile turned, the woman appeared before it again, but this time her overall form was more sinister. She was tall and gaunt, with hardly any skin, and the white of her bones shone ominously in the moonlight. She smiled an evil smile, and without a single word, she snapped her fingers, causing the entire forest to immediately turn on 682. It was an attack more sudden and more complete than any 682 had ever experienced. There was no chance to sense her hostility, no room to adapt or to react. The trees took hold of 682, and in a display of immense supernatural power that defied all logic, tore 682's very spirit out of its physical form and dragged it into the darkness beneath the forest. In its long and miserable life, the immortal reptile 682 had endured every punishment and form of damage in creation, but here and now in the Backrooms, for the very first time, 682 would not have the luxury of its hard-to-destroy, infinitely adaptable body. It was now a helpless, disembodied soul, without any means to defend itself, the perfect plaything for the Skeleton Queen herself. Now go check out Could SCP-682 Be Contained in the Backrooms? And SCP-682 Makes Friends in Backrooms for more.